2 of 2a factoring review. We're talking about trinomials of a greater than 1. Now, the a number, we need to have factors of our a number. There's a couple different things we need to do here. So in the blue here we have written, we do our diamond, yes we do, and the diamond stays the same in respect of, we take a times c on top, and the b number goes in the bottom. Always, always. Then it tells us, so let's just do that real quick first. So we're going to have 2 times 3 is 6, and I get a negative 7 on the bottom. All right. Now again, you factor AC. Okay, we want the factors of a times c. So 1 times 6, 2 times 3. Which numbers will add to give me a 7? 1 and 6. Now they're negative, so we're going to put negative signs in front of them. Okay? Negative 1 and negative 6. So I have a negative 1 here, negative 6 here. Now we used to open 2 brackets and those numbers would go in the wings. We can't yet. There's one more step we have to do. We need to factor a. Okay? We're going to factor a. It's a 2. What numbers multiply to give you 2? 1 times 2. Well, that means that's what's going to start our brackets. Instead of just x and x, 1x and 1x, we're going to have a 1x and a 2x. Those are my factors of a. So I open 2 brackets. These factors of a go at the start of my brackets. So I'm going to have a 1x and a 2x. Do you have to show that hidden 1 in front of x? No, but I'm just showing you where he is and where he came from. Now what we do is we have to divide these wing numbers by these factors of a that I have in my brackets. Now how do you know which one divides which one? You select it by seeing which one divides but doesn't give you a decimal answer. They can never give you decimal answers. So if I take the 6 and divide by 2, it gives me an answer that's not a fraction or a decimal. If I take 6 and divide by 1, I get an answer that's not a decimal, which is perfect. But if you take the 1 and divide by 2, you get 0.5. So you're not going to divide the 1 by the 2. The 1 has to divide by the 1. Oops, let's move that guy back. This guy divides by the 1, and this guy is going to divide by the 2. Okay? Now we're going to put them back in the brackets where they belong. But there's a weird way we got to put them in the brackets. The 1 that they divided by, they can't sit beside that 1 in the bracket. So if we take a look here, this negative 1 divided by the 1 right here, so his answer to the dividing can't go in his bracket. He's going to go in the other bracket. So negative 1 divided by 1 is a negative 1. The negative 6 dividing by 2, it divided by this 2, so it cannot go in his bracket. The answer is going to go in the other bracket. Okay? Now what I do is I check my smiley faces. My smiley faces, what I'm talking about, is for FOIL. It's the O and the I. So I'm going to check these two. There's my O. So my outside terms, multiply them. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1x. That's what I get for my O term. Now I check my I term. There's my I term. Negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x. Now I'm going to add them together. Do they give me my middle term of negative 7x? Do they add up to negative 7x? Yes, they do. If I check my smiley faces, and when I multiply them, then add what my answers became, they will give me my middle term. If they don't, you messed something up and did something wrong. So then try and switch things in the brackets and see where you went wrong. Okay? So in a nutshell, that's how we pretty much do this stuff. It just has 1 or 2 extra steps we have to worry about. We have to factor the a number, the number that goes in front of x. Now we have to factor him, and then we divide our wings by those numbers. And then we put them back in the brackets with the other number, not the one it divided by. Okay? So a couple little changes. Let's try the one beside it here with letter B. Okay, on letter B, again I start with my diamond. Okay, I put A times C. 15 times negative 4 is going to give me a negative 60 on top. And I have a negative 17 as a B value that goes in the bottom. Okay? Now I've got to factor A times C. So my factors of A times C, my negative 60. 1 times negative 60. 2 times negative 30. 3 times negative 20. 4 times negative 15. 6 times negative 10. And that's all. Now, or sorry, we have a 5 in there too. 5 times negative 12. And then that's all that we have that will divide into 60. Which ones, when I add them, give me negative 17? Yep, the 3 and negative 20. So we're going to choose those two. So we put them on our wings, 3 and negative 20, but now I can't put them in the brackets yet, because I know I have to divide them. I just don't know what I have to divide them by yet. So in order to find out what I have to divide them by, I've got a 15 sitting out here. Well, with 2 sitting in front of x squared was easy. How come? Because what multiplies to be 2? 1 and 2. Only this time we have a 15. We have lots of factors of 15. We have 1 times 15 and 3 times 5. How do I know which ones I'm going to put in the front with my x? How do I know if it's going to be 1 and 15 or 3 and 5? They have to go in evenly. Good. So what I do is I look at what I put on my wings over here. Okay? Could either of those numbers divide by 1 or 15 evenly? Well, we know everything divides by the 1 evenly for sure. But it could divide by the 15 evenly? No, neither of them. So I can't use 1 and 15. So I automatically know it's going to be 3 and 5. So now I've got to divide them by 3 and 5. Who divides by who? 3 divides by 3, and 20 divides by 5. Yes. Okay? If we did it the other way, we get decimal answers. We can't get decimal answers when we divide. Now the division, what we get for the answer of dividing here, that's what goes in our bracket. Okay? So, 3 divides by 3 gives me a 1. Which bracket does he go in? With the 3x or 5x? With the 5x. Good. He can't go in the bracket who he divided by. So 3 divided by 3 is a plus 1. Okay, that guy gives me a plus 1. This guy gives me a negative 4. So the negative 4 is going to go in the bracket without the 5, so he's going to go in the 3 bracket. I put a minus 4 there. Okay, now it's fully factored. The only thing I do now is check your smiley faces. The outside, 3x times 1 gives me a 3x. Inside, negative 20x. When I add them, I get negative 17x. Is that what I'm looking for? Yes, it is. So I did it right. Here's a couple more. The first one, let's take a look. On my diamond, my A times my C gives me a negative 24, negative 6 times 4. And my B number is a negative 5. So now I need to factor negative 24. So what multiplies to negative 24? 1 times negative 24. 2 times negative 12. 3 times negative 8. 4 times negative 6. And that's all. Which ones add to negative 5? 3 and negative 8. Good. So now I know my wings. 3 and negative 8. So I'm going to open my brackets. In the front of my bracket, I have something x. Over here, I have something x. How do I know what's going to start my bracket? Yeah, you have to factor A. Now, with A factoring, what are the factors that make 4? 2 and 2 and 1 and 4. Which ones am I going to divide by? 1 and 4. If I divided the 3 by a 2, what would I get? You get a decimal. We can't get decimals. So the factors of A of 4 that I'm looking at are 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. I need to use the 1 and 4. Because if I use 2 and 2, the 3 and negative 8 can't divide by 2. Okay, well the negative 8 can't, but the 3 sure can't. To give me an even number without a decimal. So I'm going to use 1 and 4. The 3 divides by the 1, the negative 8 divides by the 4. Okay, so I'm going to use 1 and 4. Now when I divide, 3 divided by 1 gives me 3. He's going to go in with the 4x. Okay, because he can't go into the bracket who he divided by. And the negative 8 dividing by 4 is going to give me a negative 2. And again, he can't go in the bracket that he divided by. That would be my final answer. Okay, let's take a look at B. Well, I'm going to draw my diamond for B. I get A times C, that's 2 times 99, is 198. I have a negative 31 in the middle. Well, 198, I don't automatically know what those numbers are that multiply. So I'm going to make my factor list. So what multiplies to 198? 1 times negative 198. 2 times negative 99. 3, oh, they're both negative, pardon me. They're both negative. Negative 3 times negative 66. Negative 6 times negative 33. Negative 9 times negative 22. And negative 11 times negative 18. Those are the only numbers that make 198. Good. Negative 9 and negative 22. So I found the 2 digits for my wings. So negative 9 and negative 22. Now I need to factor my A so that I can open my brackets and factor. So here's my 2 brackets. What are the factors of 2 that I'm going to start my brackets with? 1A and 2A. Only 2 numbers divide or multiply to give you 2, 1 and 2. So you have no choice but to put a 1 and a 2 in front of those A's to start your brackets. Now we're going to divide our wings by the 1 and by the 2. Who divides by who? Does the 9 divide by the 2? No. The 22 divides by the 2, and the 9 divides by the 1. Okay? Now their answers go in the opposite bracket. So, negative 9 dividing by 1 is going to go over here with our 2A. And negative 22 dividing by 2 gives me a negative 11. That will go in that bracket. And again, you can check your smiley faces. Over here, I get negative 9 A's. Over here, I get negative 11 A's. Add them up, I get negative 31. Or sorry, 22. That's 22, pardon me. Okay, I get negative 31 A's. Because 11 times 2 is 22. Okay, so there's a few extra steps than normal trinomials, but you follow the same flow. You got to factor the A, factor A times C to find the wings, divide the wings by the factors of A. Let's take a look at what this gives us. So, we do our diamond. On top, A times C gives me 12. On the bottom, it's a negative 7. Factors of my 12. Negative 1 times negative 12, negative 2 times negative 6, negative 3 times negative 4. The negative 3 and negative 4 give me my negative 7. So I'm going to use negative 3 and negative 4 in my wings. Now I need to factor 6. Now remember, factors of 6, we don't just have one choice now. We have 2 choices, 1 and 6, 2 and 3. So, which ones am I going to choose? 2 and 3, good. So this guy divides by the 2, he divides by the 3. So I'm going to get a 2x and a 3x that starts. The negative 3 divided by the 3, so I get a negative 1. The negative 4 divided by the negative 2 gives me a negative 2. That'll be the final answer on C. Check your work. Okay, now we're going to take a look at D. When I look at my diamond on letter D, I'm going to have negative 30 and negative 13. So, 1 times negative 30, 2 times negative 15, 3 times negative 10, 5 times negative 6. Which ones add to negative 13? 2 and negative 15. So I know my wings are 2 and negative 15. Now I need to see if I'm going to divide them by 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. How come? Because I have a 6 again in front. So am I going to start my brackets with a 2x and 3x or a 1x and 6x? 2 and 3, good. He divides by the 2, he divides by the 3. Okay, now my dividing. 2 divided by 2 is a plus 1. Negative 15 divided by 3 is my negative 5. Remember, they go in the opposite brackets of who you divided by. Last type of factoring we're going to talk about is 4-term polynomials and group factoring. So there's a certain couple ways we do this. So first of all, you arrange them in descending order. Descending order means you're actually going to start with the largest exponent and go down to the smallest exponent to no variable. Then you cut it in half and draw a dotted line down the middle. After that, you take a GCF out of both. Then you check and see if what's in the brackets is the same. If it is, then you don't have to change your negatives to positives. If it isn't, we have to go back and take a look at it. Then you write out your common binomials in the first one and the leftovers in the last. Let's see how this actually works. So, on the first one, I need my negative m squared first. Then I've got a minus m plus 2m plus 2. So really, I just started with this stuff that was on the right-hand side. Now I'm going to draw up my dotted line down the middle, and I'm going to factor each side. By factoring, I'm going to take a GCF out of each side. So this one I can take out a negative m. If they're both negative, always take a negative out. This one's going to divide by 2. When I divide by my negative m, I get a positive m. How come? Negative divided by a negative gives me my positive m left over. And again, a negative divided by a negative gives me my positive 1. On the right-hand side, I'm taking a plus 2 out. And when I divide by 2, I get m plus 1 left over. Now I look. In my brackets, are they the same? Inside my brackets, I have an m plus 1 and an m plus 1. Yes, they're the same. So that means I did it right. Now what I do is the ones that are on the outside of brackets, they get written inside a bracket together. So I've got a negative m plus 2. And then the one that is the common factor that was in the brackets that I just highlighted yellow, you only need to write it down once, m plus 1. How come? Because it is a common factor to both. That is our final answer. Now, if you don't want to start with a negative, you could change that one around, and you could write 2 subtract m. That also means the same thing. Okay, so either are correct. Let's take a look at B. When I take a look at B, everything is in descending order already, so I'm just going to draw my dotted line down my middle, and I'm going to start finding a common factor. So the first one only has one positive, one negative, so I'm going to take out a positive, and I'm going to divide them both by 5, and they both have an x that can come out. So 5x is the outside of that guy. 10 divided by 5 gives me a 2. I have an x left over. Negative 35 divided by 5, it gives me a negative 7. On the right-hand side, I can take out a negative 3. Now, why am I taking a negative 3 out? Let's watch what happens if I take a plus 3 out. So let's take our plus 3 to start with. If I take a plus 3 out, I'm going to get a negative 2x and a plus 7. If I take a look at that other bracket, do both of my brackets match if I take a look at them? Does that bracket match this bracket? They must match identically. They do not match. So if I take my right-hand side and I change my positive 3 to a negative 3, that's going to change the numbers on the inside, their signs. I'll get a positive 2x and a negative 7. Now do my brackets match? Yes, now the brackets match. So sometimes you have to check and see if it's a positive you take out or if it's a negative you take out. All right, so now what we're going to do, our last step, is to take our common factors, the ones on the outside, they go into a bracket by themselves. So I'm going to have a 5x subtract 3, and then my 2x minus 7 is in the same for the both, so I only write it once. This is my final answer. You cannot go any further. Let's take a look at a few more examples. If there's no exponents that are higher, then all you're going to do is just group the ones together that look the same. So in the first set, I have a couple things I can divide out, and in my second set, I have a couple things I can divide out as well. Here, I'm going to divide by a 2a. Over here, since they're both negatives, I'm going to divide a negative out. So I can divide a negative 2m out. All right, when I do that, my first set of brackets is going to give me x plus b, and on the right-hand side, this guy coming down, I get a negative 2m's. Now, a negative divided by a negative gives me a positive x left over. My m's are going to disappear. Same thing over here, my n's disappear, and I end up with a positive b left over. So again, in the brackets are identical. Those get written in one, 2a minus 2m, and then I get an x plus b left over. What do you notice about that first set of brackets? Anything crazy about that first set of brackets? You might notice it still has a GCF. You can divide both of those by 2. I can divide a 2 out of that. So that means I have to because it's not fully factored yet. So my final answer is going to have a 2 sitting out front Then I divide the first one by 2. A minus m. Am I dividing both factors by 2? No, just the first bracket. Then I bring the next bracket down and it sits beside it by itself. X plus b. No changes there. My final answer is what I get left with here. You must fully factor it and take that 2 out. If you don't, this other version here is not fully factored. Let's take a look at D. Letter D. If we take a look at letter D, both of them are divided evenly here. They can both divide by 4x squared on the left, and the right-hand side can divide a 3 out. So my left-hand side, 4x squared comes out. I end up with an x squared plus 2 left over. On the right-hand side, I take a 3 out. I get an x squared plus 2. Inside my brackets is identical. So my final answer is going to be 4x squared plus 3 that get written in a bracket together. And then I stick my x squared plus 2 on the end. And I only write it once. Let's take a look at the bottom. What if they're written in that way? Well, what they've actually done is they've actually done the first part for you. All you have to do is pull the factors into a bracket. So you would have 3x plus 2, and then your x plus 7 comes written beside it. That would be your final answer. They've done most of the work for you. Let's take a look at B. How would B look? Well, if there's nothing in front of that bracket on the right, it is a number. That's a hidden 1 there. So we're going to have a 9a plus 1 in one bracket. And then we're going to put our 4a plus 1 attached to the end. And that's our final answer. Let's take a look at these ones. Well, what do we notice? This is my common factor that matches. So that means that these two must go in a bracket together. So in a bracket, I'm going to get 5y plus 1 plus 4y. Then I write my 3y plus 2. What do you notice about my left-hand bracket? I've got y's and y's. I need to add them together. That's not my final answer yet. That can simplify further. So I'm going to add them together and get 9y's. So I'd have 9y plus 1 and then 3y plus 2. That will be my final answer now. I cannot go any further. Okay, let's take a look at the left-hand side on letter D. Now, if I switch things around, if I switch those two around, the 9 and the 3 have something in common, I can divide a 3 out. All right, so I'm going to rewrite this. 6a squared minus 2a minus 9a plus 3. All I did was switch the middle two, and that's going to help us in finding our common factors again. From the first set, I can divide 2a out. Last set, I can divide a negative 3 out. And again, it's going to be a negative 3. How come? Because take a look at where the negative positives are. The negative's at the front, and I need it to be in the middle like the guy on the left. So that means if I divide the negative out, my answer to the first one will become a positive, the next one becomes a negative. Let's see how it looks. So 2a starts. 6a squared divided by 2a gives me a 3a. Negative 2a divided by 2a gives me a negative 1. Negative 3 comes out. Negative 9 divided by negative 3 gives me a positive 3a's. Positive 3 divided by negative 3 gives me a negative 1. Okay, so taking that negative 3 out was super important. If I took a positive 3 out, if I divided a positive 3, I would actually get negative 3a plus 1. And remember, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the brackets to match. Okay, so that's why I had to divide the negative out. So we didn't do this part. All right, now I'm going to write those two in a bracket together. 2a subtract 3. And my last bracket, 3a minus 1. Final answer. Let's take a look at E. Again, E is written a little bit differently, so we're going to have to flip-flop things. We're going to switch the 18 and the 15 around, since 6 and 18 have more in common. All right. Okay, on E, I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to get 5x squared minus 15xy squared plus 18y squared minus 6x. Again, all I did was switch those guys places. Notice the sign in front of them stays with it. That 15 is a negative here, so his negative sign came with him. The 18 was a positive, and his positive sign came with him. Now I can take each side separately. First one I can divide out of 5x, and the second one I can divide out of 6. My left side becomes 5x, Like inside I get an x minus 3y squared. On the right, I take out a 6, and I'm going to get, let's see what I get here. I get a 3y squared, and I get a minus x. Now let's take a look on the inside of our brackets. They don't match. Here I've got an x as a positive. Over here I have x as negative. That's not what I'm looking for. So that means my 6 that I'm dividing out, I need to divide a negative 6 out. So let's divide our negative 6. That makes our 3 a negative and our x a positive. Now it's identical in every way to the one on the left. They're just written backwards. So let's rewrite it. I would have this, x minus 3y squared. All I'm doing is just switching those guys' places. Are you allowed to do that? Absolutely you are. So my final answer is going to be 5x written with the negative 6 in brackets, and then my x minus 3y squared in brackets. That is my final answer. You cannot go any further. This concludes Lesson 1A, Part 2 of Factoring Review. Stay tuned for the answers for the student practice section. Okay, again, I'm not showing you how to do it, I'm just giving you the answers to the section. So this guy will be 3ab on the outside, 4 plus 5ab in brackets. B is going to give you an answer of 6x cubed y squared in brackets, 3x minus 4y cubed. On the bottom, letter C, you'll have negative 10a squared b on the outside of brackets. On the inside, you get 4a plus 5b squared plus 1b. Do you have to show that 1 in front of the b? No, it can hide. If you look at the bottom of the page. Okay, on the bottom page, this one's going to give us an answer of 2 minus m and m plus 1. B was the same question we had before, so it's actually changing. The question you're going to do for B is this one. 14x squared minus 8x plus 21x minus 12. The answer to that is 2x plus 3, 7x minus 4. Last 4 questions. This one's going to give me x plus 6 and x plus 1. On the right-hand side, I'm going to get 2x plus 7 and x minus 5. On the bottom, 4 times x squared plus 4, x plus 2, x minus 2, and letter D. Letter D's answer is 2x plus 1 and 3x plus 4. This concludes the answers to the student section.